Are you ready to discover the Archangel that theologians argue about, mystics revere, and most Christians have never heard of? In this video, I'm going to walk you through every biblical reference, every historical account, and every prophetic connection to Archangel Jophiel, the celestial being responsible for bringing divine beauty, wisdom, and illumination to humanity. We'll explore Jophiel's role in major biblical events, uncover hidden connections in Scripture that you probably didn't know about, and reveal why understanding this archangel is crucial for your spiritual warfare arsenal. But before we dive in, if you're new to this channel, consider hitting that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Also, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. We're building a global community here. So, without further ado, let's begin, shall we? The angel hidden in plain sight. When people speak of angels, two names rise above all others. Michael, the warrior prince who stands guard over souls. Gabriel, the herald who carries messages between heaven and earth. These names echo through sacred texts, through centuries of prayer, through the collective memory of countless believers. Their stories form the bedrock of angelic tradition. Yet, beyond these well-known figures, another presence lingers in the shadows of sacred literature. This presence appears in texts that didn't make it into the official canon. Ancient writings preserved by mystics and scholars, traditions passed down through generations of spiritual seekers. The name varies across cultures and languages, Jophiel in some manuscripts, Jophiel in others, most commonly Jophiel. The canonical Bible never speaks this name directly. Search from Genesis to Revelation, and Jophiel remains absent from the official narrative. This silence puzzles many. How can an archangel of such significance leave no trace in Scripture? The answer reveals something profound about the nature of sacred knowledge. Not all divine truth fits within a single book. Some understanding flows through other channels, mystical traditions, apocryphal writings, the living experience of spiritual communities across time. Jophiel emerges most clearly in Jewish mystical texts, particularly those concerned with the deeper mysteries of creation and divine wisdom. The Zohar, that great work of Kabbalistic thought, speaks of angels who govern specific aspects of divine light. Early Christian apocrypha mention angels tasked with protecting sacred spaces. Islamic tradition preserves stories of celestial beings who taught humanity the arts of civilization. These streams converge around a single concept embodied in one angel's name: the beauty of God. This phrase translates the Hebrew name Jophiel. Not beauty in the shallow sense of pretty things or pleasing forms. Something deeper stirs beneath this title. Beauty as divine order. Beauty as the harmony that underlies creation. Beauty as the moment when truth and grace meet in perfect balance. This kind of beauty transforms those who perceive it. The mind opens, the heart expands. Understanding flows where confusion once reigned. According to the Book of Raziel, an ancient Jewish text attributed to the angel Raziel, certain angels serve as bridges between divine wisdom and human understanding. Jophiel appears in this role repeatedly across mystical literature. The angel who helps souls perceive what lies beyond ordinary sight, who clears away the fog that clouds spiritual vision, who reminds us that creation itself speaks in a language of beauty, if only we learn to read it. This idea connects to a fundamental question that has occupied theologians and philosophers for millennia. How does the infinite communicate with the finite? How does divinity make itself known to limited human minds? One answer threads through multiple traditions, through beauty, through moments when something in the world around us suddenly reveals a deeper truth. A sunset that speaks of majesty, a mathematical proof that displays elegant simplicity, a piece of music that seems to echo something eternal. These experiences open doors in consciousness. Jophiel stands at these doors. The traditions describe an angel who doesn't simply guard wisdom like a treasure in a vault. Rather, this presence actively works to illuminate minds, to polish the mirror of perception until it reflects divine light clearly. Medieval Kabbalists taught that certain angels specialize in preparing the soul to receive higher knowledge. They described Jophiel as one who sweeps away mental clutter, who dispels the shadows of ignorance and prejudice, who helps seekers distinguish between genuine insight and mere cleverness. The earliest references to Jophiel appear in texts dating back to the Second Temple period, roughly between 516 BCE and 70 CE. During this era, Jewish mysticism flourished. Scholars debated the nature of angels. Seers reported visions of celestial hierarchies. New texts circulated, expanding on the sparse angelic references in the Torah. Some of these texts became part of the Pseudepigrapha, a collection of Jewish religious writings from this fertile period of spiritual speculation. One such text, the Book of Enoch, preserves detailed accounts of angelic beings and their roles in cosmic order. Though the spelling varies, some manuscripts mention an angel whose name means beauty of God among those who serve at the highest levels of heaven. This angel appears in contexts related to wisdom, teaching, and the transmission of divine knowledge to worthy souls. The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in caves near the ancient settlement of Qumran, contain fragments that expand our understanding of Second Temple angelology. These texts describe a cosmos populated by spiritual beings of various ranks and functions: angels who govern natural forces, angels who record human deeds, angels who stand perpetually before the divine throne. Among these references, careful readers find traces of the angel of beauty and wisdom, though often the name appears damaged or unclear in the ancient manuscripts. Early Christian communities inherited much of this Jewish angelology. The Apostolic Fathers, writing in the centuries immediately following the time of Christ, occasionally referenced angelic traditions not found in the canonical Gospels. Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite, writing in the 5th or 6th century, developed an elaborate hierarchy of angels. Though he doesn't mention Jophiel by name, his system includes angels who specifically govern illumination and the transmission of divine knowledge. Later commentators identified Jophiel with this function. The Islamic tradition preserves parallel accounts. While the Quran mentions only a few angels by name, Islamic mystical texts describe a rich angelology. Sufis speak of angels who inspire poets and reveal divine secrets to purified hearts. Some scholars have drawn connections between these Islamic traditions and the Jewish and Christian accounts of Jophiel, suggesting a shared recognition of this archetypal function, even when the names differ. What emerges from these varied sources forms a consistent picture: an angel whose primary role involves helping human souls perceive divine truth, who serves as a patron of those who seek wisdom through contemplation, who guards the beauty inherent in creation against the forces of chaos and ugliness, who teaches that authentic spirituality requires not just moral behavior, but refined perception, the ability to see the divine signature written into the fabric of reality itself. This introduction raises more questions than it answers. Where exactly do we find Jophiel's story? What specific roles does tradition assign to this mysterious angel? How did a figure absent from canonical scripture become so important in mystical thought? The answers unfold across centuries and continents, through texts sacred and secret, in traditions both ancient and surprisingly modern. The journey into Jophiel's story requires patience. The evidence scatters across many sources. Some are ancient beyond measure, others emerged in medieval times. Still others reflect modern spiritual movements. Each layer adds depth to our understanding. Each tradition contributes a piece to the puzzle. Together, they reveal an angel whose influence reaches further than most people realize. An angel hidden in plain sight, waiting for those with eyes to see and hearts to understand. The name and the flame, decoding Jophiel names, carry weight in sacred traditions. They reveal essence. They point toward purpose. They encode meaning in sound and symbol. The Hebrew language, in which most Jewish angelic names originated, treats each letter as both a phonetic unit and a mystical cipher. Each letter corresponds to a number. Each combination generates layers of meaning that ripple outward like waves on water. Jophiel breaks down into two primary components. Yophi, or Jophiel, derives from the Hebrew root meaning beauty, splendor, or radiance. El serves as the standard suffix for angelic names, indicating of God or belonging to the divine. Together they create beauty of God or divine beauty. Some scholars prefer splendor of God or God's illumination. The exact translation shifts depending on context, but the core concept remains stable. This name tells us something essential about the angel's function. In Hebrew thought, beauty connects intimately with truth and goodness. These three qualities form a unity. Where one exists authentically, the others follow. The Psalms declare that the divine presence radiates beauty. The prophets speak of future glory in terms of breathtaking splendor. Wisdom literature describes understanding as more precious than gold, more beautiful than any treasure. The ancient rabbis taught that creation began with an act of divine speech. Words brought forth reality. Sound shaped substance. This means language itself carries creative power when properly understood and employed. Names function as condensed acts of creation. They don't merely label, they participate in the being of what they name. To know something's true name grants insight into its nature. Jophiel's name therefore reveals the angel's essence, not simply an appreciation for pretty things, rather, a fundamental connection to the principle of beauty as it flows from the divine source. This beauty manifests in order, in harmony, in the mathematical elegance of natural law, in the exquisite balance of ecosystems, in the stunning complexity of a single cell, in the vast spiral of galaxies rotating through space according to precise physical principles. Medieval Kabbalists developed elaborate systems for analyzing Hebrew words and names. Gematria assigns numerical values to letters. Words with the same numerical value supposedly share hidden connections. Notarikon treats words as acronyms, with each letter representing a whole word or concept. Tamura rearranges letters to reveal concealed meanings. Through these methods, mystics sought to penetrate beyond surface meanings into deeper truths. When Kabbalists analyzed the name Jophiel, they found connections to concepts of wisdom, understanding, and divine light. The Zohar, compiled in medieval Spain but claiming far more ancient origins, speaks of different qualities of divine light that descended during creation. Each quality required angelic guardians. Each found expression through specific spiritual forces. Jophiel emerged as guardian of the light associated with wisdom and beautiful perception. This connects to a fundamental principle in Jewish mysticism. The Sephirot, the 10 emanations through which the infinite divine makes itself known in finite creation. Different angels govern different Sephirot. Jophiel's association with beauty links to Tiferet, the 6th Sephirah. Tiferet represents balance, harmony, and the integration of opposing forces. It sits at the center of the Kabbalistic tree of life, mediating between severity and mercy, between justice and compassion. The flame component of Jophiel's identity requires separate attention. Multiple traditions associate this angel with fire, not destructive fire that consumes and destroys, illuminating fire that reveals and clarifies, fire as metaphor for consciousness itself, fire as the spark of divine intelligence that animates creation, fire as the transformative power that purifies without destroying what it touches. Ancient texts describe angels as beings of fire. The Psalms declare that divine servants appear as flames. The prophet Ezekiel saw living creatures surrounded by fire and lightning. Daniel described a vision of the Ancient of Days sitting on a throne of flames. This fiery nature doesn't indicate literal combustion. Fire serves as the closest physical analogy to spiritual energy that human language provides. Jophiel's flame carries specific qualities according to mystical tradition: yellow or gold in color, bright but not harsh, warming rather than burning. This flame illuminates the mind. It dispels shadows of confusion and ignorance. It reveals the true nature of things by casting divine light upon them. Some texts describe this flame as the light of consciousness itself, the fire that enables perception and understanding. The connection between beauty and flame becomes clearer when we consider how both function. Beauty attracts, it draws the eye and mind toward itself. Beauty creates desire, not in a base sense, but as longing for connection with something greater. A beautiful sunset stops people in their tracks. A beautiful equation delights mathematicians. A beautiful melody moves listeners to tears. This attraction serves a purpose. It directs attention toward divine truth manifesting in creation. Similarly, flame draws attention. Light in darkness cannot be ignored. It compels notice. It guides travelers. It gathers communities. Throughout human history, fire served as a focal point for gatherings and ceremonies. People assembled around flames to share stories, to celebrate, to commune with powers beyond the ordinary. The flame made space sacred. It marked boundaries between mundane and holy. Jophiel's name and flame therefore work together. The name defines purpose. The flame describes method. Together they point toward an angel who uses the attractive power of beauty and the revealing power of light to guide souls toward wisdom. This function appears repeatedly in traditions that mention Jophiel, the angel who helps seekers see clearly. who removes obstacles to true perception, who polishes the lens of consciousness until divine truth shines through undistorted. The Greek philosopher Plato taught that beauty leads the soul upward toward truth and goodness. He described a ladder of ascent: first, attraction to physical beauty, then recognition of beauty in souls and actions. Next, appreciation of beauty in knowledge and wisdom. Finally, direct perception of absolute beauty itself, which he identified with the good and the true. Though Plato wrote centuries before Jewish mysticism developed its full complexity, similar ideas appear in later Kabbalistic thought. This convergence across cultures suggests something universal. Human beings across time and geography have recognized beauty as a pathway to transcendence, as a means by which the infinite communicates with the finite, as a language that speaks directly to the soul without need for words. Jophiel personifies this principle. The angel embodies the idea that divine truth reveals itself through beauty to those prepared to perceive it. The name also carries a promise. If beauty flows from God, then everything that exists participates in beauty to some degree. Creation itself becomes a vast artwork expressing divine creativity. Even in a world marked by suffering and imperfection, beauty breaks through. It reasserts itself. It reminds us that something greater underlies the chaos. Something ordered, something intentional, something that cares about harmony and grace. Understanding Jophiel's name therefore requires more than translation. It demands meditation on what beauty actually means in a theological context. Beauty as truth made visible. Beauty as the signature of divine craftsmanship. Beauty as the gentle teacher that shows rather than tells. Beauty as the flame that illuminates without consuming. These concepts layer upon each other, creating a rich understanding of why this particular angel carries this particular name. The texts that mention Jophiel invariably connect the name to the angel's function. They describe an angel who actively works to beautify creation, who opposes forces of ugliness and disorder, who teaches souls to perceive the divine light hidden in all things. The name isn't arbitrary. It reveals mission. It announces purpose. It tells us what this angel does and why it matters. Guardian of the Gate, Jophiel in the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden exists in sacred memory as humanity's first home, a place of perfect communion between the human and divine, where creation revealed itself in unspoiled beauty, where every need found satisfaction, where consciousness walked with its creator in the cool of evening. Then came the choice, the fruit, the knowledge, the exile. Everything changed in that moment of reaching beyond boundaries. The book of Genesis describes the aftermath with sparse precision. Humanity faced expulsion from paradise. The gate closed behind them. But the text adds a crucial detail. God placed cherubim at the east of the garden, along with a flaming sword that turned in all directions. These guardians prevented return. They sealed the way to the tree of life. They marked the boundary between what was lost and what remained. The canonical text doesn't name these cherubim. It describes their function, but not their identity. This silence created space for later traditions to fill in details. Jewish mystical texts, drawing on oral traditions and visionary experiences, began to name the guardians. Different sources provide different names. Some texts speak of multiple cherubim sharing the duty. Others identify a primary guardian who stands sentinel over paradise's eastern gate. Jophiel emerges in several of these traditions as Eden's primary guardian. The identification appears in medieval Kabbalistic sources and in certain Christian mystical writings. The logic behind this assignment becomes clear when we consider the angel's essential nature. Who better to guard paradise than the angel of divine beauty? Who more appropriate to stand watch over creation's most perfect expression? This role carries profound symbolism. The garden represented beauty in its most complete form. Every plant grew in ideal proportion. Every animal lived in perfect harmony with its environment. The rivers flowed with crystalline purity. The air itself seemed to shimmer with divine presence. Beauty saturated every aspect of that original creation. When humanity lost access to Eden, we lost direct contact with this primordial beauty. Jophiel's guardianship means something specific. The angel doesn't simply keep people out like a bouncer at a door. The flaming sword doesn't merely threaten. Rather, this presence maintains the sanctity of what lies beyond. Paradise remains pristine precisely because it stays protected. The tree of life continues to grow, the rivers still flow, beauty endures in that sealed space, untouched by the corruption that spread through the world outside. Some traditions interpret the flaming sword itself as an extension of Jophiel's nature. Remember that this angel associates strongly with divine fire and illumination. The sword that turns in all directions could represent enlightened consciousness, the flame that reveals truth in all its aspects, a barrier made not of solid matter, but of pure light. Only those purified and prepared could pass through such a barrier. All others would find themselves unable to perceive the way forward. This interpretation suggests something hopeful. The gate remains closed but not locked forever. The guardian stands watch but might someday step aside. Various traditions speak of paradise regained, of a future restoration when the righteous return to Eden. When that time comes, who would open the way? Who would lower the flaming sword and invite souls back into beauty? The same one who guarded it. The angel of divine beauty who maintained paradise in trust until humanity grew ready to receive it again. Medieval commentators noted that the cherubim faced east. They guarded the eastern gate specifically. In ancient Middle Eastern geography and symbolism, east carries special significance. The sun rises in the east. Light comes from that direction. Eden itself was planted in the east, according to Genesis. This orientation matters. The guardians don't block all approaches. They specifically guard the direction of light, the way of illumination, the path that leads toward divine radiance. Jophiel's placement at the eastern gate therefore becomes doubly significant. The angel of illumination guards the gateway toward light. This creates a kind of riddle or paradox. To return to paradise requires passing through light itself, requires becoming light, requires purification and transformation so complete that one can merge with the flaming barrier rather than being repelled by it. The guardian becomes the test. The barrier becomes the teacher. Some Kabbalistic texts describe Jophiel as maintaining paradise, not through force, but through beauty itself. The garden remains so unutterably beautiful that unprepared souls cannot bear to approach. Like looking directly at the sun, the radiance overwhelms. The mind recoils, the heart quails. Only those whose perception has been refined through spiritual practice and divine grace can withstand the full glory of Eden. The angel helps maintain this overwhelming beauty, ensures that it doesn't diminish, keeps it burning at full intensity. This connects to ideas about thresholds and liminal spaces. The gate of Eden marks a boundary between two modes of existence. Inside, time moves differently. Decay doesn't touch. Death holds no power. The tree of life offers endless vitality. Outside, everything flows toward entropy. Bodies age. Civilizations rise and crumble. Even mountains eventually wear away. The guardian maintains this boundary, prevents the corruption of time from seeping into timelessness. Ancient Jewish texts speak of multiple gardens or levels of paradise, the earthly Eden described in Genesis, a heavenly Eden where souls of the righteous go after death, perhaps even a future Eden to be restored when the world undergoes final transformation. Jophiel's role might extend across all these levels, guarding not just a physical place, but a state of being, a condition of consciousness, a realm where beauty and truth merge completely. The flaming sword itself invites deeper reflection. Swords serve as weapons. They divide, they separate, they cut away what doesn't belong. A flaming sword that turns in all directions suggests discrimination in its purest sense, the ability to distinguish true from false, pure from impure, ready from unready. The guardian wields this discrimination, applies it to all who approach. Those who have cultivated inner beauty find the way open. Those still mired in ugliness of thought or deed face an impassable barrier. Christian mystical interpretation added another layer. After Christ's crucifixion and resurrection, some theologians argued the way back to Eden partially reopened. The faithful could now access paradise through grace. The guardian might allow passage to those marked by redemption. This doesn't contradict the idea of Jophiel as guardian. Rather, it suggests the angel's role evolved. What was once absolutely sealed now admits the purified. The standards remain high, but a path forward exists. Islamic tradition preserves similar themes, though typically without naming Jophiel specifically. Angels guard paradise. The righteous enter gardens of delight after death or at the end of days. These gardens echo the original paradise. They restore what was lost. The guardians who once expelled humanity now welcome back those who proved worthy through faith and good works. All these traditions circle around the same core idea: paradise remains real. It didn't vanish when humanity fell. It endures, protected and preserved. An angel of supreme beauty stands watch over supreme beauty. This angel doesn't hate those who were expelled. Rather, this presence loves paradise so much that it cannot allow corruption to enter. The guardian serves not from harshness, but from dedication to keeping one space in all creation absolutely pure. Understanding Jophiel as Eden's guardian transforms how we think about both the angel and the garden. Paradise becomes less a lost past and more a present reality, existing behind a veil. The angel becomes less an enforcer and more a curator, a protector of beauty, a keeper of the sacred flame, one who waits for the day when the gate might open again and the lost children of Eden return home. The patron of perception, Jophiel and the power of thought. Thought shapes reality, not in a metaphysical sense where thinking alone creates physical change. Rather, thought determines what we notice, what we value, how we interpret experience. Two people can witness the same event and construct entirely different meanings from it. The difference lies not in the event, but in the minds encountering it. This power of thought to shape perception fascinates philosophers and mystics alike. Jophiel emerges across multiple traditions as the angel most concerned with this realm, the angel who governs how minds work, who influences the quality of thinking, who helps souls perceive clearly rather than through distorted filters. This role makes Jophiel the patron of everyone who works with ideas: artists seeking inspiration, philosophers pursuing truth, scientists trying to understand nature's patterns. Anyone who relies on clarity of thought can invoke this angel's aid. The connection between Jophiel and thought flows naturally from the association with beauty. Beautiful thinking produces beautiful results. Clear thoughts generate clear insights. When mental clutter accumulates, perception clouds. Prejudices distort understanding. Old patterns repeat mindlessly. The mind becomes a tangled garden, overgrown and chaotic. Jophiel's influence acts like a divine gardener, trimming away dead growth, clearing paths, creating space for new beauty to emerge. Medieval grimoires and books of angelic magic frequently list Jophiel among angels who can be petitioned for wisdom and illumination. These texts describe specific prayers and invocations. They outline rituals designed to attract angelic attention and aid. While the methods vary wildly and often reflect more about their human authors than about angels themselves, the underlying idea remains consistent. Jophiel helps minds work better, helps seekers break through mental blocks, helps truth emerge from confusion. Jewish mystical tradition describes angels who specialize in teaching. The Talmud speaks of angels instructing souls in Torah before birth. Other texts describe angels as tutors of the prophets, angels who appeared to Abraham, to Moses, to Elijah, bringing not just messages but understanding. Jophiel fits this pattern. An angel who doesn't simply tell people what to think, but helps them develop the capacity to think well. To perceive truth directly rather than accepting it secondhand. This teaching role extends beyond intellectual knowledge. Jophiel supposedly helps develop aesthetic sense as well, the ability to distinguish between genuine beauty and mere prettiness, between deep art and shallow entertainment, between truth and clever lies. This discrimination requires training. The eye must learn to see, the ear must learn to hear, the mind must learn to recognize patterns of truth and beauty. Artists throughout history have reported experiences of inspiration, moments when ideas flow effortlessly, when creative blocks dissolve, when the work seems to paint or write or compose itself. Attributing these experiences to angelic intervention would sound strange in secular contexts, but in traditional societies where the spiritual realm interweaves with daily life, such attributions make perfect sense. The artist becomes a channel. The angel provides the vision. The collaboration produces beauty that neither could achieve alone. Renaissance painters sometimes depicted themselves with angels hovering nearby as they worked. These images weren't mere artistic convention. They reflected genuine belief that creative inspiration flows from beyond the individual ego, that beauty comes from a source higher than human skill alone, that angels guide the hands of those who seek to reveal truth through art. Jophiel appears occasionally in these contexts, especially in works dealing with theological or mystical themes. Philosophers too found reason to invoke this angel. The pursuit of wisdom requires more than logic. It demands intuition, the ability to perceive connections between disparate ideas, to recognize truth when it appears, even in unexpected forms. Plato spoke of philosophical insight as a kind of vision, the mind's eye opening to perceive eternal forms. Later, Christian and Jewish philosophers, familiar with angelic hierarchies, saw no contradiction in seeking angelic aid for this vision. If angels serve as mediators between divine and human realms, why not ask their help in understanding divine truth? The concept of beautiful thinking deserves closer attention. What makes a thought beautiful? Clarity, certainly. A beautiful thought cuts through confusion like a sharp blade through cloth. Simplicity matters too. Beautiful thoughts don't require elaborate explanations. They feel right immediately. Coherence plays a role. Beautiful thoughts fit with other truths. They integrate rather than contradict. They add to understanding rather than creating new puzzles. Jophiel's patronage over thought extends to these qualities. The angel helps minds achieve clarity by removing obstacles, old assumptions that no longer serve, emotional blocks that prevent honest examination, mental habits that lead nowhere. Like cleaning a dirty window, Jophiel's influence lets light shine through more purely. The mind sees more clearly when these obstructions disappear. Modern psychological research, though conducted without reference to angels, confirms the importance of mental clarity. Cognitive biases distort perception. Confirmation bias makes us see what we expect. Availability bias makes us overweight recent experiences. Dunning-Kruger effect prevents accurate self-assessment. These and dozens of other biases create a funhouse mirror between reality and perception. Training can reduce their influence but never eliminate it entirely. In this context, Jophiel's role gains new relevance. If we reinterpret the angel not as a literal being but as an archetype or principle, Jophiel represents our highest potential for clear perception, the best version of our thinking capacity, the ideal toward which we strive. Invoking Jophiel means committing to honest thought, to examining our assumptions, to questioning our certainties, to remaining open to beauty and truth wherever they appear. Some traditions describe specific practices for connecting with Jophiel's influence. Meditation focused on yellow or gold light, the colors associated with this angel, prayers asking for wisdom and clear sight, rituals performed at dawn when light first breaks through darkness, symbolizing the illumination Jophiel provides. Whether these practices produce literal angelic contact or simply focus intention doesn't matter as much as their effect. They orient the practitioner toward clarity and beauty. The connection between Jophiel and educators deserves mention. Teachers, in the best sense, don't simply transfer information. They help students learn to think. They model clear reasoning. They demonstrate how to approach problems systematically. They inspire love of learning and beauty. A truly great teacher transforms students' perception, opens their eyes to possibilities they never imagined. This mirrors exactly what Jophiel supposedly does for souls seeking wisdom. Contemporary spiritual movements, particularly those in the New Age category, emphasize Jophiel's role in clearing mental clutter. Modern life generates enormous amounts of information. Social media, news cycles, constant connectivity. The mind struggles to process it all. Important signals drown in noise. Clear thinking becomes increasingly difficult when attention fragments across dozens of inputs. Calling on Jophiel in this context means seeking the discipline and focus needed to cut through noise and find signal. The angel's association with the yellow ray in color healing systems reflects similar ideas. Yellow represents intellect, clarity, and mental energy. Healers working with color might invoke Jophiel while surrounding a client with yellow light. The intention aims to clear mental fog, lift depression, and restore mental vitality. Again, whether this works through literal angelic intervention or through the power of focused intention and symbolic meaning, the underlying principle remains the same. Beautiful thinking requires clear mental space. Scientists might invoke Jophiel, even unconsciously, when seeking elegant solutions to complex problems. The most beautiful scientific theories combine maximum explanatory power with minimum assumptions. Einstein's E = mc² achieves extraordinary elegance. Maxwell's equations unify electricity and magnetism in a few simple relationships. Evolution by natural selection explains incredible biological diversity through a single clear mechanism. These theories possess aesthetic appeal beyond their truth value. They embody the kind of beautiful thinking Jophiel represents. Understanding Jophiel as patron of perception forms the angel from distant cosmic figure to immediate practical aid. Anyone can call upon this principle. Anyone can aspire to clearer thinking. Anyone can work to remove mental obstacles and develop better perception. The angel becomes less a supernatural being to worship and more a standard to pursue, an ideal of what human thinking can become when purified and refined. The teacher of Torah, Jophiel in Jewish mysticism. Jewish mystical tradition contains layers upon layers of teaching about angels. The Torah itself mentions angels sparingly. Messengers appear to Abraham. Jacob wrestles with an angel. Angels ascend and descend the ladder in Jacob's dream. But the Torah provides few details about angelic nature or hierarchy. Later traditions filled this gap, developing elaborate angelologies drawn from oral teaching, visionary experience, and theological speculation. The Talmud, compiled between the 3rd and 6th centuries CE, preserves many angelic traditions. One particularly striking teaching claims that angels taught Torah to souls before birth. In heaven, the soul learns all divine wisdom. The angel acts as teacher, revealing secrets of creation and law. Then, at birth, another angel touches the infant's lip, causing forgetfulness. The soul enters the world with knowledge buried deep in the unconscious, waiting to be remembered through study and practice. Joph. Each sephira on the Tree of Life has angelic guardians. These angels don't simply stand watch. They actively participate in the flow of divine energy from source to creation. They mediate. They translate infinite light into forms finite minds can grasp. Jophiel connects to Bina, the sephira of understanding, in some Kabbalistic schemes. Bina represents the womb of creation, the place where undifferentiated divine light begins to take specific form. Understanding requires this kind of formation. Raw data means nothing until organized into patterns. Bina performs this organization at a cosmic level. Jophiel, as one of Bina's angels, helps individual minds perform similar organization on a personal scale. Other traditions link Jophiel to Tiferet, the sephira of beauty and harmony. This connection seems more obvious given the angel's name. Tiferet sits at the center of the Tree of Life. It balances opposing forces. It integrates severity with mercy, justice with compassion. Beauty emerges from this balance. When opposing forces achieve perfect proportion, the result delights the eye and mind. Jophiel, as guardian of divine beauty, naturally associates with Tiferet's harmonizing function. The Book of Raziel the Angel, attributed to the angel Raziel, who supposedly taught Adam, contains prayers and divine names of enormous power. Later Kabbalists treated this text as a key to understanding angelic hierarchies. References to Jophiel appear in commentaries on this work. Scholars identified this angel as one who helps seekers understand the deeper mysteries, who assists in the contemplation of divine names, who makes the incomprehensible slightly less opaque. One particular tradition claims Jophiel served as Moses' teacher during his years in the desert. After fleeing Egypt but before receiving the call at the burning bush, Moses lived as a shepherd in the wilderness. Those years seem empty in the biblical account, 40 years reduced to a few sentences, but mystical tradition fills this gap. Moses didn't waste those decades. He prepared, he studied, he contemplated, and angels guided this process. According to this tradition, Jophiel appeared to Moses in various forms, sometimes as a wandering sage, sometimes as visions during meditation, sometimes as sudden insights that arose unbidden. The angel taught Moses to see beauty in the harsh desert, to perceive divine presence in rock and sand, to understand that God speaks through creation itself for those with eyes to see. This preparation proved essential. When the time came to lead the people out of bondage, Moses possessed not just courage but wisdom, not just authority but perception refined by years of angelic instruction. Other traditions describe Jophiel as a companion to prophets generally. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel all received visions that required interpretation. The bizarre imagery of prophetic literature makes little sense at face value. Four-headed creatures, wheels within wheels, valleys of dry bones. These visions convey truth through symbol and metaphor. Understanding them requires a special kind of perception. the ability to see beyond literal meaning to deeper significance. Jophiel supposedly aided this process, helped prophets grasp what their visions meant, translated divine message into human concepts. The angel's teaching role extends to the afterlife, according to some sources. Jewish tradition describes Gan Eden, the garden of paradise where righteous souls go after death. This paradise includes academies of learning. The soul continues to study Torah even after departing the body. Angels serve as teachers in these academies. Jophiel appears among these celestial instructors, guiding advanced souls toward ever deeper understanding. The Midrash, collections of rabbinic commentary and Tian teaching, occasionally references angels who help scholars penetrate the meaning of difficult passages. When a rabbi struggled with an obscure text, when contradictions seemed impossible to resolve, tradition allowed for angelic assistance. Not that angels would simply provide answers. Rather, they would help the scholar's mind open to new possibilities. They would remove mental blocks. They would inspire creative interpretations that honored both letter and spirit of the text. This teaching method reflects Jophiel's essential nature. Beautiful teaching doesn't impose, it invites. It creates space for discovery. It asks questions that lead students to find their own answers. A skilled teacher knows when to speak and when to remain silent, knows when to offer direction and when to let the student struggle productively. Jophiel supposedly embodied this pedagogical wisdom, the angel who taught by illuminating rather than dictating. Medieval Kabbalists developed practices specifically to invoke Jophiel's aid in their studies. They would begin learning sessions with prayers calling on this angel. They would meditate on the divine name associated with Jophiel before approaching difficult texts. They would visualize golden light filling their minds, clearing away obstacles to understanding. These practices served both psychological and spiritual functions. They focused intention. They created ritual space. They invited divine assistance into the learning process. The connection between Jophiel and Torah study runs deeper than simple tutoring. Torah in Jewish mysticism represents far more than law or history. It embodies divine wisdom itself, the very blueprint of creation. The Zohar teaches that God consulted the Torah before creating the world. Every letter contains universes. Every word holds infinite meaning. To study Torah becomes an act of contemplating the divine mind, of touching the source code of reality. Jophiel's role in facilitating this study becomes crucial. If Torah contains such profound depths, approaching it requires preparation. The mind must be purified. The heart must be opened. Distractions must be set aside. Ego must be subdued. Only then can divine wisdom flow into human consciousness. Jophiel helps create these conditions. The angel prepares the vessel to receive the light. Some traditions describe Jophiel as maintaining the celestial library where all knowledge is stored, every thought ever thought, every discovery ever made, every truth ever perceived. This library exists beyond space and time. Souls can access it under certain conditions, through deep meditation, through prophetic vision, through moments of inspiration when the boundary between human and divine consciousness temporarily dissolves. Jophiel serves as librarian and guide in this infinite archive. The practical implications of this teaching role matter greatly to those who take it seriously. Students invoke Jophiel before exams. Scholars call upon this angel when beginning research projects. Writers petition for help breaking through creative blocks. Anyone facing a mental challenge might turn to the angel of beautiful thinking for aid. These practices persist today among certain Jewish mystics and in broader spiritual communities that draw on Jewish angelology. Contemporary Kabbalists sometimes describe working with Jophiel as developing a relationship rather than simply making requests. The angel becomes a constant companion in intellectual and spiritual pursuits, a presence one learns to sense, a voice that whispers insights during meditation, a feeling of clarity that descends when the mind achieves proper alignment. Whether this represents literal angelic contact or a personification of one's highest cognitive potential remains open to interpretation. The image of Jophiel as teacher connects to broader themes in Jewish thought about the transmission of wisdom. Judaism emphasizes the importance of teachers and students, of chain of traditions stretching back through generations. Each teacher received from their teacher, who received from their teacher, all the way back to Moses at Sinai. Angels fit into this chain. They serve as the ultimate teachers, the ones who originally transmitted divine wisdom to human consciousness. This teaching role also explains Jophiel's concern with beauty. Education at its best should be beautiful, not in superficial ways, but in the elegance of a well-structured argument, in the satisfaction of understanding something previously opaque, in the joy of discovery, in the wonder that arises when truth reveals itself. Jophiel represents this ideal of education as aesthetic experience, learning that delights even as it instructs. The exiler of sins, Jophiel in the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch stands apart from other ancient texts, not quite scripture, not quite apocrypha, existing in that liminal space where sacred and hidden meet. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church accepts it as canonical. Judaism and most Christian denominations do not, yet its influence spreads far beyond any official status. Early church fathers quoted it, medieval mystics studied it. Modern scholars recognize its importance for understanding Second Temple period Judaism. Enoch himself appears briefly in Genesis, a righteous man who walked with God and then was no more because God took him. The text provides no details about where God took him or why. This gap invited elaboration. The Book of Enoch, preserved primarily in Ethiopic translation, fills that gap with elaborate visions of heaven, hell, and the cosmic order. Angels feature prominently throughout. The text describes watchers, a class of angels assigned to observe humanity. These watchers fell from grace according to the account. They saw the beauty of human women and desired them. They descended to earth, took wives, and taught forbidden knowledge to humans. Metalworking, cosmetics, astrology, weapon making, knowledge that led humanity astray. The offspring of these unions became giants, the Nephilim, who brought violence and corruption to the world. God's response came through the archangels. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel received commands to deal with the situation. They imprisoned the fallen watchers. They destroyed the giants. They purified the earth. Different sections of Enoch assign different roles to these archangels. Some passages mention additional names among the angels who served in this crisis. Jophiel appears in certain manuscripts and traditions related to these events, though the name varies across versions. Some texts use Iophiel or Zophiel. The spelling inconsistency reflects the complex transmission history of Enochian literature. Texts were copied and recopied across centuries, translated from Hebrew to Aramaic to Greek to Ethiopic. Names morphed, details shifted. Core narratives remained stable while specifics varied. In traditions that mention Jophiel in connection with the Watcher's story, the angel serves a specific function, not warrior like Michael, not messenger like Gabriel, not healer like Raphael. Instead, Jophiel addresses the corruption of knowledge itself. The Watchers taught humanity things they weren't ready to know, knowledge that should have remained hidden. Jophiel's task involved cleansing these corrupted teachings, removing false wisdom, restoring proper understanding. This role fits perfectly with Jophiel's other attributes. The angel of beautiful thinking must oppose ugly thinking. The guardian of divine beauty must combat the ugliness introduced by forbidden knowledge. The teacher of truth must correct false teaching. The Watchers perverted wisdom by sharing it prematurely and improperly. Jophiel worked to undo this damage. Some interpretations suggest Jophiel served as the angel who taught humans to forget the corrupted knowledge. After the flood destroyed the world the Watchers had corrupted, humanity needed to start fresh, but memories of the old ways might persist. Mental patterns established before the deluge might continue. Jophiel supposedly helped cleanse these mental remnants, allowed the survivors to build a new world on better foundations. The Book of Enoch describes elaborate punishments for the fallen Watchers, bound in valleys of darkness, imprisoned beneath mountains, forced to watch as their offspring were destroyed. These physical punishments address the Watchers' physical crimes. But what about the intellectual and spiritual damage they caused? Who corrected the distorted teachings? Who restored beauty to human thought after the Watchers uglified it? Traditions point to Jophiel as the answer. One passage in some Enochian traditions describes an angel tasked with driving out the memories of sin. This phrase captures something profound. Sin isn't just action, it's also thought pattern. It's the mental grooves that lead to destructive behavior. Truly exiling sin requires changing how minds work, helping humans forget the old, corrupt ways of thinking. teaching them to perceive reality clearly again without the distortions introduced by forbidden knowledge. Jophiel's role as exiler of sins therefore operates on a mental and spiritual level. The angel doesn't just punish wrongdoing. The angel helps heal the cognitive damage that makes wrongdoing likely, clears away the mental pollution that the watchers introduced, restores the original clarity of human perception before corruption set in. This healing work requires immense delicacy, removing corruption without destroying the mind itself, cleansing without causing more damage than the original problem. The concept connects to ideas about spiritual warfare found across many traditions. Evil doesn't just manifest in actions, it begins in thoughts. Temptation starts with an idea that seems appealing. Sin begins when that idea takes root and grows. Fighting evil therefore requires addressing these mental seeds, preventing them from germinating, or uprooting them before they spread. Jophiel specializes in this kind of spiritual gardening. Different versions of the Enoch story assign different numbers of archangels to the response team. Some say 4, others 7, still others name 10 or 12. Jophiel's inclusion depends on which version and which tradition one follows. The name appears more prominently in medieval Jewish interpretations than in the earliest texts. This suggests later scribes and mystics identified Jophiel with functions implied but not explicitly named in the original. The fallen watchers supposedly taught specific skills. Azazel taught weapon making. Semjaza taught enchantments. Armaros taught counter-enchantments. Each watcher specialized in particular forbidden knowledge. This suggests each responding archangel might have specialized in countering specific corruptions. Jophiel's specialty would naturally involve restoring beautiful thinking, where the watchers introduced ugly, destructive thought patterns. Contemporary readers might struggle with the literal elements of the Watcher story: angels taking human wives, giants walking the earth, divine beings teaching metallurgy. These details seem mythological, but the underlying theme remains relevant. Knowledge can be corrupted, teaching can be perverted, minds can be poisoned by false ideas. Every generation faces this problem. Every era produces its own versions of corrupted knowledge that seems appealing but leads to destruction. Jophiel's role as exiler of sins thus extends beyond ancient mythology. The angel represents the principle that minds can be healed, that corrupt thinking can be cleansed, that beauty can be restored even after ugliness has spread. This offers hope. No matter how distorted perception becomes, no matter how tangled thinking gets, no matter how deeply false ideas take root, restoration remains possible. The exiler of sins can do the work of cleansing and renewal. Some mystical traditions describe calling on Jophiel when struggling with persistent negative thought patterns, obsessive thoughts, compulsive worries, mental loops that replay endlessly. These modern psychological challenges echo the ancient idea of corrupted thinking. Jophiel's traditional role as cleanser of mental corruption translates into asking this angel to help break free from destructive mental habits, to exile the sins of thought that poison daily life. The Book of Enoch itself underwent suppression in many religious communities. Too strange, too detailed in ways Scripture shouldn't be, too willing to speculate about things that should remain mysterious. Yet it preserved ideas that influenced Jewish and Christian mysticism for centuries: the concept of fallen angels who corrupted humanity, the hierarchy of archangels with specialized roles, the possibility of heavenly journeys where prophets receive direct revelation. All these ideas appear in Enoch and spread through later traditions. Jophiel's presence in Enochian lore, even if disputed or variable across manuscripts, places the angel in this crucial stream of influence. The traditions that mention Jophiel in connection with the Watcher story contribute to the larger portrait of an angel deeply concerned with the state of human consciousness, who guards against corruption of thought, who works to maintain or restore clarity and beauty in how minds work, who serves as divine response to mental and spiritual pollution. The icon and the image, depicting the divine angels, present a unique challenge to visual artists. How does one paint something that has no physical form? How does one sculpt a being of pure spirit? Early Christian communities debated whether depicting angels was even appropriate. Some argued that any image of the divine or semi-divine violated commandments against graven images. Others maintain that angels had appeared in human-like forms to biblical figures, so depicting them in art honored their role in salvation history. By the medieval period, Christian art had developed elaborate conventions for depicting angels: wings to indicate heavenly nature, halos to show holiness, beautiful faces to suggest divine perfection, robes and colors with symbolic meaning, specific attributes for named angels. Michael carried a sword, Gabriel held a lily or trumpet, Raphael appeared with a staff and fish. These visual conventions helped illiterate believers identify which angel appeared in a given artwork. Jophiel presented special challenges. Unlike Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael, this angel never appears by name in canonical scripture. No biblical narrative describes Jophiel's appearance or attributes. Artists who wished to depict Jophiel had only mystical and apocryphal traditions to draw from. This left more room for creative interpretation, but also meant less consensus about proper depiction. The flaming sword became Jophiel's primary attribute in most artistic traditions. This connects to the role as guardian of Eden. Artists depicted Jophiel standing before Paradise's gate, sword raised and blazing. The sword itself merited careful attention. Not a physical weapon, but rather a manifestation of divine light. Some artists painted the blade as pure flame. Others showed it gleaming with gold and yellow light. The sword turned in all directions, suggesting constant vigilance and complete coverage. Yellow and gold emerged as Jophiel's colors across many traditions. Yellow represents intellectual activity, wisdom, and mental clarity in color symbolism. Gold signifies divinity, perfection, and incorruptibility. Together, these colors capture Jophiel's essence, an angel concerned with illuminating minds, who brings divine light to human consciousness, who helps perception shine with golden clarity. Medieval illuminated manuscripts sometimes included Jophiel in scenes of paradise, small paintings in the margins of text, initial letters decorated with miniature gardens and angelic figures. These images rarely survive in large numbers. Manuscripts were expensive, many were destroyed over centuries. But surviving examples show artists grappling with how to represent an angel whose primary function involved something internal and invisible, the transformation of thought. Renaissance artists occasionally depicted Jophiel in larger works, though less commonly than the major archangels. A few paintings show Jophiel teaching in celestial academies, surrounded by attentive souls, gesturing toward books or scrolls, light radiating from the angel's form. These images attempted to visualize the teaching role described in mystical texts. They made concrete what traditions described abstractly. The Baroque period brought more dramatic and emotional angel depictions. Angels became more dynamic, more engaged with the human realm. In this context, Jophiel might appear in scenes of inspiration, hovering behind artists or scholars, whispering in their ears, illuminating manuscripts with divine light. These paintings reflected the belief that creative inspiration flows from beyond the individual, that beauty comes from heaven before manifesting through human hands. Orthodox Christian iconography developed its own conventions. Icons aren't merely decorative. They serve as windows into spiritual reality, as aids to prayer and contemplation. Angels in Orthodox icons appear more stylized than in Western art, flatter, more symbolic, less concerned with realistic human anatomy. An Orthodox icon of Jophiel would emphasize the angel's spiritual function rather than attempting naturalistic depiction. In Orthodox tradition, the posture and gesture of angels matter enormously. Hands positioned in blessing, eyes gazing with particular expression. Specific colors arranged in meaningful patterns. An Orthodox iconographer creating an image of Jophiel would draw from established conventions while adding elements specific to this angel's role. The yellow and gold color scheme, perhaps a book to represent teaching, the flaming sword if depicting the Eden guardian role. Jewish artistic tradition approached angels differently. Early Judaism largely avoided depicting angels at all. The prohibition against graven images weighed heavily. Synagogue decoration focused on geometric patterns, plant motifs, and Hebrew calligraphy. Angels might appear in manuscript illustrations, but rarely as sculptural or prominent painted figures. Jophiel would typically not appear in specifically Jewish religious art, though Jewish mystical texts describe the angel in words. Islamic art takes this even further. Depicting any living being, especially prophets or angels, violates traditional Islamic artistic norms. Calligraphy, geometric patterns, and arabesque designs replace figurative art in most Islamic religious contexts. Yet Islamic mystical poetry describes scribes' angels in elaborate detail. Sufis wrote extensively about angelic visions and encounters. The angels lived vividly in words and imagination, even if never rendered in paint or stone. This raises an interesting point about Jophiel specifically. An angel concerned with perception and beautiful thinking might be better honored through beautiful words than through images. Poetry captures something that painting cannot. Music conveys aspects of beauty that sculpture misses. Perhaps Jophiel's true artistic representations lie not in visual art, but in the texts that describe the angel's functions, in the mystical poetry that celebrates divine beauty, in the philosophical treatises that explore how minds perceive truth. Modern spiritual movements produced new Jophiel imagery. New Age art often depicts angels in softer, less traditional styles. Jophiel appears surrounded by yellow light, sometimes holding crystals or other objects associated with mental clarity, sometimes hovering in lotus position, suggesting meditation. These images blend traditional angel symbolism with contemporary spiritual aesthetics. They attempt to make ancient concepts accessible to modern seekers. Digital art opened new possibilities for depicting angels. Artists can now create images of pure light without the limitations of paint or stone. Jophiel, rendered digitally, might appear as swirling patterns of yellow and gold, as fractals suggesting infinite complexity, as light that seems to move and shimmer even in still images. Digital tools allow representations of non-physical entities in ways previous generations could only imagine. The question remains whether any image can truly capture Jophiel's essence. An angel whose primary function involves transforming how minds work operates at a level beyond visual representation. You can paint a sword, you can render gold light, but can you paint clarity itself? Can you sculpt the moment when confusion lifts and understanding dawns? Can you photograph the experience of perceiving beauty so profound it changes you? Perhaps the best artistic representation of Jophiel would be something that actually produces the effect the angel supposedly creates. Not an image of the angel, but an experience of angelic influence. A painting so beautiful it stops viewers in their tracks and opens their perception. A piece of music so profound it illuminates the mind like golden light. A poem that clears away mental clutter and leaves the reader seeing truth more clearly. In this sense, every great work of art might serve as a kind of Jophiel icon. Every creation that truly manifests beauty and truth, that helps viewers perceive more clearly, that elevates thought and refines perception. The angel of beauty works through beauty itself. The image becomes less important than the impact. The representation matters less than the reality it points toward. The angel of our time, Jophiel in modern spirituality. The 20th century witnessed an explosion of interest in angels. After centuries where they remained mostly confined to traditional religious contexts, angels suddenly appeared everywhere. In popular culture, in books and workshops, in therapeutic practices, in New Age spirituality. This angel revival transformed how many people think about these beings. Jophiel benefited significantly from this renewed attention. The New Thought movement, emerging in the late 19th century and flourishing through the 20th, emphasized the power of mind to shape reality. Positive thinking, creative visualization, the law of attraction. These ideas focused attention on consciousness itself. How thoughts create experience. How mental patterns determine life outcomes. This framework made Jophiel newly relevant. An angel specifically concerned with the quality of thinking naturally appeals to movements focused on mental power. New Thought teachers began incorporating Jophiel into their systems. They described the angel as a helper in clearing negative thought patterns, in establishing positive mental habits, in cleansing the mind of clutter and confusion. Jophiel became the angel you called upon when undertaking mental transformation. Theosophy, the esoteric system developed by Helena Blavatsky and her followers, included elaborate angelology. Theosophists spoke of rays of divine light, each with specific qualities and governed by specific beings. Jophiel became associated with the second ray, the ray of love-wisdom, or in some systems with the yellow ray of illumination and intelligence. These assignments varied among different theosophical teachers, but consistently emphasized Jophio's connection to mental and spiritual illumination. The I Am movement, an offshoot of theosophy founded in the 1930s, placed great emphasis on the seven archangels and their rays. Each day of the week had an associated archangel and ray. Practitioners would focus on different angels on different days, visualize their colored light, invoke their aid for specific purposes. Jophiel featured prominently in these practices, usually on Sunday, the day of illumination and wisdom. As these esoteric systems spread through the broader culture, their angelology came with them. Books on angels began appearing in mainstream bookstores, not theological texts, but practical guides. How to contact your guardian angel, how to invoke archangelic aid, how to work with angelic energy in daily life. Jophiel appeared regularly in these books, almost always in connection with intellectual and creative pursuits. The 1980s and 1990s saw massive growth in angel literature. Doreen Virtue, one of the most popular angel authors, wrote extensively about the archangels. Her books described Jophiel as the angel of beauty, who helps with creative projects, interior decorating, and thinking beautiful thoughts. This presentation made Jophiel accessible, practical, relevant to everyday concerns rather than abstract theological concepts. Crystal healing systems incorporated angels into their frameworks, different stones supposedly connected to different angels. Citrine, with its yellow color, became associated with Jophiel. Practitioners would hold citrine while meditating on Jophiel. They would place the stone on their forehead to activate the third eye chakra with Jophiel's illuminating energy. These practices blended ancient angelology with modern alternative healing modalities. Chakra systems, borrowed from Hindu and Buddhist Tantra and adapted for Western spiritual practice, provided another framework for understanding Jophiel. The solar plexus chakra, located in the stomach area and colored yellow, governs personal power and mental clarity. Jophiel became associated with this chakra. Invoking the angel supposedly helped balance and activate this energy center, improving self-confidence and clear thinking. Modern angel meditation practices often include Jophiel, guided meditations where practitioners visualize golden yellow light filling their minds, clearing away mental fog, dissolving negative thoughts, illuminating the path forward. These meditations require no religious belief. They function as psychological tools using angelic imagery. Whether the practitioner believes in literal angels or treats them as archetypes makes little difference to the practice itself. The internet age accelerated Jophiel's spread through modern spiritual culture. Websites offering angel guidance, online courses on working with archangels, YouTube videos with Jophiel meditations. Pinterest boards full of Jophiel artwork and quotes. Social media groups dedicated to sharing experiences with this angel. The digital realm made information about Jophiel accessible to anyone with an internet connection. This accessibility had interesting effects. Traditional religious communities largely ignored or dismissed New Age angelology. But individual seekers blended ideas freely. Someone might attend Catholic Mass on Sunday and do a Jophiel meditation on Monday. Another person might study Kabbalah but also use New Age techniques for invoking angelic aid. The boundaries between traditions became porous. Modern stress culture made Jophiel's traditional functions more appealing than ever. Information overload, constant distraction, mental fatigue from endless connectivity. These contemporary problems cry out for solutions. An angel who specializes in clearing mental clutter addresses a genuine need. Whether you believe in angels literally or metaphorically, the idea of invoking Jophiel provides a framework for addressing mental overwhelm. Artists and creative professionals particularly embrace Jophiel. Writers facing blocks called upon this angel. Painters preparing to start new projects invoked Jophiel's illumination. Musicians seeking inspiration meditated on the angel's golden light. These practices might work through psychological mechanisms like focusing intention and reducing anxiety, or they might involve actual angelic intervention. The results mattered more than the mechanism. Environmental aesthetics became another arena for Jophiel invocations. Feng Shui practitioners incorporated angelic energy into their systems. Interior designers who worked with conscious design principles might invoke Jophiel when arranging spaces. The angel of beauty helping create beautiful surroundings. This application stretched traditional angelology but made sense given Jophiel's core attributes. Education reformers interested in holistic approaches sometimes reference Jophiel. Schools focused on creativity and multiple intelligences, programs emphasizing beauty and joy in learning, teaching methods that honored each student's unique way of perceiving and processing information. Jophiel's role as teacher made the angel relevant to these educational innovations, even if few educators would explicitly invoke angels in secular school settings. Psychology and therapy began cautiously incorporating spiritual concepts, including angels. Jungian analysts already worked with archetypes, making angel imagery a natural fit. Transpersonal psychology embraced spiritual experiences as valid objects of study. Some therapists encourage clients to work with angel imagery if it helped them. A feel might serve as a focus for someone working on negative self-talk or cognitive distortions. Critics complained that modern angel spirituality trivialized ancient traditions, that reducing Jophiel to a helper with interior decorating missed the profound theological significance, that treating angels as cosmic vending machines, insert prayer, receive blessing, showed spiritual immaturity. These criticisms have merit. Much popular angel literature does oversimplify, does ignore the richer traditions, does focus more on material outcomes than spiritual transformation. Yet the popularity of Jophiel in modern spirituality also suggests something genuine, a hunger for beauty in a world that often feels ugly, a desire for mental clarity amid chaos, a longing for connection with something beyond the purely material. Jophiel in contemporary practice serves needs that traditional religion doesn't always address, provides tools and frameworks that people find helpful, whatever the ultimate metaphysical reality might be. The angel of our time emerges not from tradition alone, but from the intersection of ancient wisdom, contemporary need. Jophiel speaks to modern anxieties while carrying forward ancient associations, offers practical help while pointing toward transcendent reality, remains rooted in mystical texts while blooming in new spiritual soil. This adaptability might itself reflect the nature of an angel concerned with perception, appearing in forms that each era can recognize and receive, distorting the divine, Jophiel in occult and esoteric traditions. Western occultism developed along paths quite different from mainstream religious traditions. Where religion emphasized faith, prayer, and moral living, occultism focused on knowledge, technique, and power. Occultists sought to understand hidden laws governing reality. They developed practices to manipulate these laws. They created systems for invoking spiritual beings and compelling them to serve human ends. Angels featured prominently in these systems, though often in ways their religious counterparts would have found troubling. The grimoire tradition, flourishing from medieval times through the Renaissance, produced books of magical procedures. The Key of Solomon, the Lesser Key of Solomon, the Book of Abramelin. These texts claim to reveal secrets of commanding spirits and angels. They provided elaborate instructions for preparing magical spaces, crafting talismans, and performing invocations. The procedures required precision, exact times, specific symbols, proper offerings. One mistake could result in failure or worse. Angels and grimoires served human purposes. Need money, invoke the angel of prosperity. Want love, call upon the angel governing romance. Seek revenge, darker grimoires listed angels who could curse enemies. This instrumental approach treated angels as tools, as servants to be commanded rather than powers to be revered. The grimoires contained prayers and invocations, but the relationship implied differed fundamentally from religious devotion. Jophiel appears in some grimoires, though less commonly than the major archangels. Where mentioned, this angel usually connects to matters of wisdom and mental influence. A magician might invoke Jophiel to increase intelligence, to succeed at studies, to gain favor from teachers or judges, to sharpen wit and memory. These purposes align with Jophiel's traditional associations, but the context transforms their meaning. The difference lies in attitude and approach. Religious practitioners pray. They ask, they submit to divine will. If the prayer goes unanswered, they accept this as God's wisdom. Occultists, by contrast, command, they compel, they expect results. If the procedure fails, they assume they made a technical error rather than accepting a higher power's refusal. This creates a fundamentally different relationship with spiritual beings. Ceremonial magic, as practiced by orders like the Golden Dawn, developed sophisticated systems of correspondences: colors, planets, elements, numbers, Hebrew letters, tarot cards, everything connected to everything else in vast webs of meaning. Angels fit into these systems. Each angel governed specific forces. Understood which angel ruled which domain allowed magicians to work with appropriate powers for their goals. In Golden Dawn angelology, Jophiel might connect to specific Sephiroth on the Tree of Life, to specific paths between Sephiroth, to specific planetary forces. The exact placement varied depending on which Golden Dawn offshoot you consulted. Different teachers had different views, but all agreed that understanding these correspondences gave power, allowed more effective magical work, made invocations more likely to succeed. Aleister Crowley, perhaps the most famous occultist of the 20th century, developed his own elaborate angel system. His Book of the Law, allegedly dictated by a preternatural intelligence, became scripture for his Thelemic religion. Crowley claimed contact with his holy guardian angel through extended magical operations. He taught that every person has such an angel, that achieving knowledge and conversation with this angel represents the great work of magical development. Jophiel doesn't feature prominently in Crowley's specific system, but the general approach Crowley represents affects how occultists think about all angels. Not as servants of God, but as independent forces. Not as beings to worship, but as entities to understand and work with. Not as morally superior, but as different forms of consciousness with which humans can enter into relationship. Chaos magic, emerging in the late 20th century, took an even more pragmatic and psychological approach. Chaos magicians argue that the specific symbolic system matters less than belief and will. Angels work not because they objectively exist, but because the human mind finds them useful. A chaos magician might invoke Jophiel one day and a completely different system the next. Whatever produces results deserves use. Whatever fails gets discarded. This approach strips away theological meaning entirely. Jophiel becomes merely a useful symbol, an effective focus for magical intention. Whether the angel objectively exists separate from human consciousness becomes irrelevant. The practice works through psychological mechanisms: focusing will, aligning conscious and unconscious mind, programming reality through belief. The angel serves as a convenient mental construct. Critics from religious traditions find this deeply problematic. It reduces angels to tools. It ignores their nature as servants of divine will. It implies humans can manipulate forces that should inspire awe and reverence. The occult approach treats as mechanical and controllable what religion considers sacred and sovereign. This fundamental disagreement cannot be reconciled. The worldviews differ too completely. Yet occultism preserves angel lore that might otherwise have been lost. Grimoires maintain traditions when official religious channels suppressed them. Occultists studied ancient texts that religious authorities ignored. They preserved names, attributes, and associations. Modern knowledge of angels like Jophiel owes debts to occult transmission, however much the religious might wish otherwise. The internet age brought occult practices into mainstream awareness. Online forums discuss magical procedures. Websites explain invocation techniques. Apps provide grimoire texts. This democratization of occult knowledge has interesting effects. People experiment with practices their ancestors would have found shocking, blend traditions without regard for their origins, invoke angels using methods that religious authorities would condemn. Modern practitioners often don't realize they're working with distorted traditions. They find a Jophiel invocation online. They perform it without understanding the historical context, without knowing whether it derives from religious devotion or occult manipulation. The internet strips away context, presents all traditions as equally valid options in a vast spiritual marketplace. Pick what appeals to you, mix freely, judge only by results. This creates both possibilities and problems. On one hand, spiritual experimentation might lead to genuine growth. Someone might discover through occult practice what religious tradition never taught them. On the other hand, treating angels as cosmic vending machines misses deeper truths, reduces profound spiritual realities to techniques for getting stuff, replaces transformation with manipulation. The occult treatment of Jophiel also raises questions about consent and relationship. Do angels want to be invoked through magical procedures? Do they appreciate being commanded rather than petitioned? Traditional religious practice assumes angels serve divine will first. They help humans when it aligns with divine purposes. Occult practice assumes angels can be compelled. That proper technique overcomes any resistance. These assumptions rest on very different models of cosmic order. Some occultists argue they're not actually forcing angels to do anything. Rather, they're aligning themselves with angelic forces, learning to work in harmony with these powers. The elaborate rituals serve not to compel, but to attune, to make the magician a suitable vessel for angelic influence. This interpretation bridges somewhat between religious and occult approaches. It maintains respect for angels while still claiming human agency. Yet, even this softer interpretation bothers religious traditionalists. They argue humans should approach angels with humility, should see themselves as servants seeking to serve, should never presume to command or even align with forces so far above human station. The proper human response to angels is awe, reverence, and obedience to divine will channeled through them. Anything else reflects dangerous pride. The debate over how humans should relate to angels like Jophiel continues. No consensus exists. Religious practitioners follow devotional approaches. Occultists pursue magical techniques. New Age seekers blend elements from both. Skeptics dismiss it all as superstition. Each group proceeds according to its assumptions. Each produces results that confirm their worldview. Each dismisses other approaches as misguided. What remains clear is that occult and esoteric traditions significantly shaped modern understanding of Jophiel. Many contemporary angel books draw on occult sources without acknowledging them. Color correspondences, planetary associations, specific attributed powers. These often derive from grimoire and ceremonial magic traditions. The angel spirituality that seems so wholesome and positive often has roots in practices religious authorities once condemned as diabolical. This history complicates simple narratives. Jophiel cannot be understood solely through religious texts, nor through New Age books, nor through occult grimoires. Each tradition contributed, each influenced the others, each distorted as well as preserved. The angel that emerges from this tangled history defies simple categorization, resists containment in any single framework, appears differently depending on the lens through which you view it. Perceiving the divine, the enduring legacy of beauty, stories follow patterns. Heroes journey from home, face trials, return transformed. Teachers impart wisdom through parables. Myths encode cultural values in memorable narratives. We expect stories to have beginnings, middles, and ends, clear arcs that resolve, characters who develop, plots that conclude. Jophiel's story refuses these expectations. This angel appears in fragments scattered across centuries, in mystical texts from different cultures, in traditions that sometimes contradict each other, in practices ranging from devotional prayer to magical compulsion. No single narrative unifies these appearances. No clear biography emerges. Jophiel never went on a quest, never grew or changed, never resolved a central conflict. The story lacks story structure. Yet this absence of narrative might itself reveal something essential. Angels don't have biographies because they don't exist in time the way humans do. They embody principles, represent functions, serve as faces given to forces that transcend personality. Jophiel doesn't have a story. Jophiel is a story about beauty, wisdom, and the human capacity to perceive divine truth. This realization shifts how we understand everything explored across these accounts. The guardian of Eden's gate, the teacher of Torah, the exiler of sins, the patron of artists. These aren't episodes in a sequential biography. They're facets of a single, timeless archetype. Different traditions glimpse this archetype from different angles. Each captured part of the truth. None captured it completely. The archetype itself centers on perception, on how consciousness works, on what happens when minds encounter beauty and truth. Every human being experiences moments when confusion suddenly clarifies, when a difficult concept finally makes sense, when beauty strikes with force that stops breath, when the world reveals itself as more wonderful than previously imagined. These moments share a quality, a sense of recognition, of seeing clearly what was always there but hidden. Jophiel personifies this experience, gives it a name and face, allows people to relate to it as a presence rather than an abstract concept. When mystics spoke of invoking Jophiel, they meant inviting this clarifying perception into their consciousness. When artists prayed for Jophiel's aid, they sought the moment when creative vision breaks through. When scholars called on this angel, they asked for obstacles to understanding to dissolve. The enduring legacy of beauty, therefore, refers not to pretty things, but to this transformative perception. Beauty in the sense of rightness, of fitting perfectly, of truth manifesting in a form consciousness can grasp. This kind of beauty appears in mathematics, in elegant proofs where complex problems resolve through simple insights, in scientific theories that explain vast domains through minimal assumptions, in philosophical arguments that cut through confusion with clarity. It appears in art, obviously, in paintings that capture something essential about the human condition, in music that expresses emotions words cannot reach, in poetry that makes the familiar strange and wonderful, in stories that reveal truth through fiction. These works don't just decorate life, they illuminate it. They help people see more clearly. They refine perception. Beauty of this sort also manifests in nature, in the mathematical precision of crystal structures, in the elegant efficiency of evolution, in the vast symmetries of physical law that govern everything from atoms to galaxies. Scientists studying these patterns often report experiences of awe bordering on religious feeling, the sense of glimpsing something far greater than themselves, of touching the mind of creation itself. Jophiel's connection to all these forms of beauty makes the angel relevant across domains, not confined to religious experience, not limited to artistic creation, not restricted to intellectual pursuit. Wherever human consciousness reaches toward truth and encounters beauty, Jophiel's influence might be said to operate. Whether you personify this influence as an angel or understand it as a capacity within consciousness itself matters less than recognizing its reality. The modern world creates obstacles to this kind of perception. Constant distraction fragments attention. Information overload makes discernment difficult. Cynicism dismisses beauty as naive. Materialism reduces everything to mechanism. Busyness leaves no space for contemplation. These forces work against the clarity Jophiel represents. They cloud perception rather than clarifying it. Yet beauty persists. Truth endures. The human capacity for clear perception survives. Every generation produces artists who create works of genuine beauty, thinkers who penetrate to genuine truth, ordinary people who experience moments of extraordinary clarity. The archetype Jophiel represents cannot be suppressed. It emerges wherever consciousness encounters reality with openness and attention. This persistence suggests something fundamental about human nature. We are built to perceive beauty, wired to respond to truth, capable of moments when the veil lifts and we see clearly. These capacities define us as much as language or tool use. They make us human in the deepest sense. Jophiel names and honors these capacities, treats them as gifts rather than accidents, points to their divine source. The various traditions examined each approach this archetype from their own angle. Jewish mysticism emphasized teaching and wisdom. Christian devotion focused on guarding paradise. Islamic poetry celebrated divine beauty. Occult practice sought to harness illumination. New Age spirituality offered practical techniques for accessing clarity. Each tradition contributed something valuable. Each also had limitations. Understanding emerges not by choosing one tradition as correct, but by recognizing how each illuminates different aspects of the whole. Jophiel as teacher reminds us that wisdom requires instruction, that we need guides on the path toward clear perception. Jophiel as guardian shows that some truths must be protected, that not all knowledge should be freely available to unprepared minds. Jophiel as beautifier points to the aesthetic dimension of truth, that understanding should delight as well as convince. What remains constant across all versions is the human need for moments when perception clarifies, when beauty breaks through, when truth reveals itself, when consciousness touches something greater than its ordinary boundaries. These needs transcend culture and era. They define human spiritual hunger across all times and places. Jophiel's enduring relevance stems from speaking to these constant needs through culturally specific forms. The angel's apparent ability to adapt reflects not fickleness, but deep truth expressed through different symbols. The same reality appears differently depending on the framework through which you view it. Jophiel in ancient mystical texts and Jophiel in modern meditation practice refer to the same underlying principle, wearing different cultural clothing. The legacy of beauty means this: humans will always need ways to access clearer perception. We will always create symbols and practices that facilitate these moments. We will always recognize, honor, and cultivate the capacity to see beauty and truth. Jophiel represents this ongoing human work, names it, celebrates it, provides a focus for practices that develop it. Future generations will undoubtedly develop new ways of understanding and working with this archetype. New technologies might enable new forms of perception. New philosophical frameworks might reframe how we think about beauty and truth. New spiritual movements might invoke Jophiel through methods we can't yet imagine. The specifics will change, the underlying need will not. As long as humans seek wisdom, Jophiel remains relevant. As long as artists pursue beauty, this angel stands as patron. As long as minds struggle with confusion and long for clarity, Jophiel offers aid. The angel hidden in plain sight continues to work, continues to guard, continues to teach, continues to illuminate. Not through force, but through the gentle, persistent power of beauty itself. The entire story of Jophiel turns out to be not a story at all, but an invitation to perceive more clearly, to think more beautifully, to recognize divine presence manifesting through creation, to develop the capacities that make us most fully human, to become, in however small a way, agents of the same illumination Jophiel represents. This invitation remains open. The gate to paradise may be guarded, but the path toward beauty and truth lies available to all. The flaming sword that once expelled humanity from Eden might also illuminate the way back. The teacher still offers instruction to willing students. The patron still inspires artists and thinkers. The angel of divine beauty still works to beautify human consciousness. The beauty of God shines through creation constantly. Most of the time we miss it, distracted, clouded, asleep to the wonder that surrounds us. But sometimes through grace or practice or simple accident, the veil thins. We see, we recognize, we remember. These moments gift us with meaning and purpose. They remind us why consciousness exists, what awareness is for. Jophiel represents both the gift and the giver, the moment of clear seeing and the principle that makes such moments possible. The experience of beauty and the divine beauty experienced. To speak of this angel means speaking of our own highest potential, our capacity to perceive truth, our ability to create and recognize beauty, our birthright of consciousness that can touch the divine. The story continues. Each person who experiences a moment of clarity adds to it. Each artist who creates genuine beauty expands it. Each thinker who penetrates to truth deepens it. Each seeker who pursues wisdom with sincerity participates in it. Jophiel's story becomes our story. The angel's work becomes our work. The beauty of God seeking to manifest more fully in human consciousness and creation. This remains the enduring legacy, not a set of doctrines to believe, not a historical figure to study, not even an angel to invoke. Rather, a living possibility that each moment offers, the possibility of seeing clearly, of thinking beautifully, of perceiving the divine signature written into reality itself, the possibility of becoming bearers and channels of the beauty that makes existence worthwhile, the possibility of joining Jophiel's eternal work of illuminating minds until all consciousness shines with divine light.